sake. Okay, follow the rules. Okay, this is supposed to be a raptor muscle. So this is the muscle, right? That is actually attached to the hair. It is involuntary, so that means you have no control with it, and each of the muscle are actually connected with one motor neuron. So this is where the yellow color sort of picture right here is connected to the muscle. I also mentioned, right, most of the hair need oil to lubricate it, to sort of moisturize it. So you will find an oil gland right next to the hair. So as I mentioned, when you find a gland that is directly kind of attached to the hair, your best bet in this case it is the oil gland. Okay, so you have the oil gland attached to the hair. Now the correct name of the oil gland, it is called the sebaceous gland. But if you name it as the oil gland, for me that is fine. Okay. Next. Okay. Then the hair structure of the hair or the hair follicle actually divided into couple layers. Okay. You have the dermis papillae, which is the bulk of the vascular connective tissue that you would find in the bulk. So basically, the very basal layer of the hair, where most of the living cells are supposed to be found, you will see a tiny little bulk. I don't know how to describe, but it's kind of like a triangular shape. Okay, this part is called the dermis papillae, and I have nothing to say about it. It's really just needed to memorize it. That's the name of the structures. Okay. Anything very important about that? Not really, but that is really the basal, the very basal, the bottom part of the hair structures. Okay. And sometimes, right, when you're trying to pull out a hair from your head, right, this is where you will have a lot of sort of a lipid molecule that is going to kind of wrap around the bolt. Okay, and that also sometimes to help you to determine is your hair healthy or not. A healthy hair is supposed to have more sort of a lipid molecule that kind of stick around the bulb area. Okay, when you pull out one little piece of hair from your scalp, for example. Okay, and then you have the hair sort of a matrix. So it's where the region you have most of the cell division that is going to happen. So where is it? Quite easy. If you can identify the dermis papillae, okay, it is just right above it. So this is where most of the cell division it is going to take place. Okay? Am I confused you? Everyone okay? All right. Okay. Continue. Now and then, if you cut the hair horizontally, okay, and you sort of looking at the hair as a top view, then the hair is supposed to be divided into 3 layers, more or less. Okay? Quite easy. You have the middle part, or the central part of the hair. They call it as a medulla. Now this is the vocabulary that will come back to you when you learn about the kidney, the same vocabulary that talk about the internal structure of the kidney. They all call it as a medulla. Okay? So the medulla is really the middle part, sort of a loose tissue, have a lot of air space depending on what we're talking about. But this is used to describe a central part of a structure. Okay? And then the outer part, it is the cortex. So basically you can think about it, it's like the epithelial tissue, the outer layer part that actually wrap around the medulla. Okay? And then you know that most of hair that you have is kind of shiny, right? Is because we have a layer what we call as kind of like a waxy cuticles that it's like a plastic layer that cover the entire hair, right? So the most outer layer is called a cuticles, kind of like a waxy layer. So 3 layers. Okay. Other than that, let's see. I think if you can do that, you can actually cross out this slide. Okay, and then continue with the next slide. All the hair have a receptor because hair help you to pick up some of the sensation, especially touch. Okay, so each hair at the very bottom are actually connected to one receptor, and oftentimes it is a touch receptor. So make sure you know about that. Okay, so that is why, all right, you have a nerve fiber that is actually attached to the hair, and it is related to touch and related to the hair movement. Okay? Each hair, as I described it, you have the arrector pilior muscles. Okay, this is actual the correct name of the muscle rather than pilio arrector muscle, but it's arrector pilior muscle. Okay, but whatever your folks say, it's up to them. Okay, so since it is involuntary muscle, so they are the smooth muscle. I sort of talked about that already. Okay, am I confused you up to here? Okay, all right. Now here is hairs. They are different color, and they can be kind of straight. They can kind of wavy. They can kind of be curly, right? It's only due to one important factor. Now, when the hair is going to grow, when you cut the hair horizontally, you can actually describe the hair into 3 different shapes. If you have a straight hair, it's very likely due to the fact that when you cut it horizontally, the hair is just look round, so this is why your hair is straight. If you have sort of a wavy hair, when you cut the hair horizontally, they're kind of oval shape, and when you have a curly hair, when I mean curly, it's sort of highly curly, okay, then you really have a flat hair shape. So if I needed to describe them, it is straight, okay, sort of wavy, and you have a highly curly hair. This is how it looks like if you cut it horizontally, okay? Hair has a different color, basically due to the pigment, the amount of the pigment, okay, and which kind of a pigment you have. If you have brown hair and black hair, unfortunately, I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce the pigment, the name of the pigment. Melanin? Am I saying right? Some sort of melanin, right? Okay, this is the name of the pigment. So I do want you to make sure you know about that, because I may give you an easy multiple choice question asking what's the pigment that you mostly find in brown or black hair. Okay, if you have a red hair, okay, you have slightly amount of this particular pigment, but you have another pigment that is called the phenolmelanin, something like that. Okay, but that's the name of the pigment you mostly find in the red hair. Okay, so if you have a blonde hair and then you do have a sort of an intermediate amount of the red pigment and a little bit of the black color pigment. So it is just basically depending on what color you have. There are 2 major pigments that compose of your hair color. Okay, when you're getting older, if you have more white hair, it is basically mean that most of the pigment that's supposed to be found in your hair, they are all sort of gone and disappear. Okay, this is why, this is how it look like. So it gives you some sort of idea what the amount of the pigment, how it look like, and the shape of the hair, why you have a curly and a straight hair, something like that. Okay, so I'm going to skip that. I know I'm actually going through it quite quick. I'm sorry about that. But there are a few things that I want you to read. I'm not going to talk about it in the lecture. You will have to read about the hair cycles. Okay? So make sure you read it at home. That's for your lecture exam. Okay? You will have to read it yourself. Hair growth and hair loss. And I believe your book talk a little bit about some of the issues that people are actually suffering. Why we lose a lot of hair in the early age. Okay, that is also a problem for me, right? You see my forehead? I don't have a lot of hair, right? I just start to lose hair. Okay, so that's also a problem for me. But that's the book talk about that. So make sure you sort of read about that. So it's just keep talking about different kind of hair loss issue, what's going on with the hair growth and hair loss. So this is the part that I will ask you to read it at home, okay? Function of hairs. Most of them are quite easy. Hair is hairs. If we're talking about animals, I already mentioned most of the hair that compose or form the skins, we call it as a fur, right? And they are supposed to be a sort of a layer that help us to maintain our body temperature. Unfortunately, humans are a little bit different because through evolution we lose most of the hair on our skins, okay? But we still have receptor as for hair movement and to have a sort of a sensation, okay? And you do have hair sort of around your eyeball, okay? And most of those hair, they are used to protect your eyes, especially when you go to a place that are dusty and windy. The hair that is surrounding your eyes are supposed to be to block the dust that by random chances that actually kind of blow into your eyes, alright? Okay? So this is why you have all this hair around it. But you know, right now it's a different story. But anyway, that's the original kind of the idea why we have hair around the eyeball, okay? For protection of the eye, okay? I give you a very quick review about the hair. If you still get very sort of confusing, feel free to talk to me after that, okay? Nails, I really don't have much to say about nails, but you know that most of the nails are dead because they are the dead cells, right? And most of the nails have a lot of protein structure. They are the very top protein called the hard keratinized protein. Your nails are flat, and it's just the nail can be divided by the different part of the nail, and we can call it as a nail body, nail root, and the edges. Okay, the edges is basically the tips of the nail. Most of the time, you are trying to cut them. Okay, the pink part that sort of stick with your fingers and your tissue on your fingers, right? The pink part in the middle is just the nail body, okay? And then the very bottom, or the sort of the bottom part of the tissues, most of the cell division and the live tissue you will find, and they keep dividing, right? As a result, it will push the nail to grow and getting longer, okay? So that's all the idea. It's just those three vocabulary kind of to talk about. So as a result, we have a photo like that. I may give you a photo like this in a multiple choice question, and I just ask you to label it. Now when I mean label it, I'm not asking you to fill in the blank. I'm meaning I give you a choice A, B, C, and D, and I'm pointing to A, or question number 23. Name that part, and then you have choice A, B, C, and D, and probably you will have a choice as the nail body. Okay, this is what I mean. Okay, I do not want to confuse you. Your multiple choice is multiple choice. Mostly it's just A, B, C, and D, right? 4 choices. Or I may have filled 2 or 4 questions, but there's no matching, there's no short question, okay? So in general, there's just a bunch of vocabulary that describe the nail structure, okay? But what I wanted to do is the last part, your gland. Now, I'm afraid that in your lab practical, you may have some trouble to identify the gland, because as I mentioned, when you cut a gland, by assuming this is the tube that composed of the sweat gland, okay? If I cut it this way, what you're supposed to see is a bunch of circles, right? Because this is like 3-dimensional picture. If I cut it this way, right, what you are supposed to see in the slide is a bunch of circles, but the same thing, but now the orientation is slightly different. Okay? So you really needed to be careful and drop a very good notes, go home, read all the picture in your lab practical. Now at least if you wanted to be ready for your practical, when you feel comfortable, you think, hey, I'm going to get a good grade in the labs, and go a Google search and just type a epithelial tissue and see are you able to recognize it or not, okay? You see a lot of examples from our lab. We will try to use the same microscope slide and set up and put it on the microscope. But if you wanted to make 100% sure you were going to do a good job, then perhaps you wanted to test yourself with the Google picture. Okay? Now, feel free that you want to sort of look at. This is one kind of a sweat gland. Okay? For me, I will, because the way that how it works, how it look like, I will assuming they actually have a horizontal cut. Okay? This is a slide that related to the oil gland. Okay, why I know, if I don't look at the pictures, if I don't look at the label, why I know about this is oil gland? Well, first of all, what is this? A hair follicle, right? So if you don't know the answer in the lab practical, but I'm pointing to some sort of a circular structure, it looks like glass to me, and they are sort of right next to it, you probably want to tell me that's an oil gland, right? Make sense? Okay? Now this is another kind of a sweat gland. As I mentioned, there are two kinds of sweat gland. Both are slightly different in terms of the ingredient that they compose of the sweat, which is why I needed to talk about. Two kinds of sweat gland, okay? Let me see what I wanted to tell you. Now, how you distinguish the difference between the two, right? One of the major difference is the apocrine sweat glands, okay, are mostly much thick, more milky, and contain a lot of fatty acids. Okay, so they are the sweat gland that oftentimes producing some sort of a sense, a smell. Okay, so if you think about that, right, where all this gland is going to come from, right? Armpit is one of the examples, right? When people doing a heavy exercise, when they start to be smelly, a lot of the reason is due to the sweat from the armpit. Okay, now this is also, since it is a smell, right? Our apocrine sweat gland are, including all the sweat gland that you find in the armpit, are actually can be functioned as like a perfume, okay? And it is a smell that oftentimes used to attract the opposite sex, okay? So sometimes, I don't know, but perhaps you have experience, perhaps I may be wrong. I'm not meaning to offend anybody, but sometimes perhaps you smell a person and they have a smell, and then you will say, hey, he or she is sexy because of the smell, right? Okay, it's mostly due to the fact that we do producing some kind of smell from the sweat gland. So this is mostly due to the apocrine sweat gland, right? Okay, at the very beginning, okay, the previous slide I forgot to mention. Okay, this is the more common kind of a sweat gland because most of the ingredients are mainly water. Okay, so that is mostly function to use to release sweat, and as a result help us to regulate our body. So most of the sweat are 99% of water, okay, and the rest are mainly salt. Okay, so this is why your sweat tastes kind of salty. Okay, and then sometimes it has some other ingredient, a little bit of oil, a little bit of protein, but that mostly is just water and salt. Okay, so it is mostly kind of watery, and it is used to help us to cool down the body temperature. So once again, there's two kinds. One is mostly used to help us to regulate the body temperatures. 99% are composed by water. The other kind is more thick, more milky, more sticky, okay, and they producing smells. And this is a good sort of a nutrient source for the bacteria. Okay, if you do not wash your body every single day, then you start to be very smelly. This is why, because the bacteria will pick up the protein and use it as a nutrient. Okay. What I wanted to talk about sweat. 99% are mostly composed of water. Sweat are a little bit of acidic, so it is a pH range between 4 to 6. So just give you a quick idea, right? 1 to 6, it is sort of acidic. In between 7, it's neutral. Anything above 7, like 7.6, all the way up to 14, it is the base. Okay, so that's the pH value. Okay. A few things that I wanted to mention. Your oil glands. Okay. It is used to secrete oil, so it is an oily kind of secretion. Few function for oil gland is used to producing a layer of oil that's going to be released on the skins. Okay, so it's used to moisturize your skins. Okay, your oil is going to form a layer of protection, kind of like a layer that's to block the bacteria. Okay, so it's like for immune protection. The oil gland also release the oily substance to sort of to make your hair to be more shiny, and they're supposed to be more healthy. Okay, so don't worry too much about the rest of the gland. What you really wanted to study for chapter 6, just The oil gland is oil gland, okay? We just classify them all together as oil gland. But the sweat gland has two kinds. One is more milky, right? One is more watery. Am I confused you? Okay. A few other things that I wanted to talk about. There are some unique glands that find in a particular part of the body, okay? Especially your ears, okay? There are glands that actually producing in general the ear wax, okay? So that's the name of the gland. Cranial gland is the gland that actually producing the ear wax. Now, where all these ear wax it is going to be produced? If you just apply the same concept, I have some tissue that is going to help me to producing a mucus, and they are found, for example, in the trachea, and those are considered as epithelial tissue and the cell, right? Then as a result, if you don't know what's the name of the tissue that actually producing the earwax, then think about what kind of tissue that actually compose most of the gland. Epithelial tissues, right? So as a result, epithelial tissues or the epithelial cells are actually the ones that producing the earwax. Okay, so there's no difference. Sweat gland is composed of the epithelial tissue. Oil gland is composed of the epithelial tissues. Okay, mucus is produced by the epithelial tissue. Now your earwax is also produced by the epithelial tissue. Okay. One last thing that I will not talk about it is mammalian gland. You have to read it at home. Another reason for that is sometimes it's just a little bit embarrassing for me to talk about the mammalian gland because it's just because. Okay. So just go home and read it, and I'm sorry about that. And other than that, I believe I already talked about the bird, right? Remember, I have a plastic model you can look at in the lab, and if you flip to the back, there are 3 degrees of burning, right? If you still remember, what are the 3 different degrees? The first degree burn the epidermis layer, right? The second degree, you burn the dermis layer and most of your connective tissue, right? The third degree, that means you burn all the way very deep to the hypodermis. Okay, so remember what are the 3 different degrees. And then the last part of the chapter talk about skin tissue. Well, I'm not asking you anything about that, so you don't worry about the skin tissue. Also, the very last chapter, I believe, they ask you about skin cancers, skin disease. But I will ask you a little bit about the definition of different kind of degree burning on your skin. So make sure you know about that. Okay. Pretty much that's kind of chapter 6. Okay. I will go back and talk about the mammalian gland more in details when we talk about the reproductive structures. At that time, I will be focusing on it. But right now, just kind of read through it. Okay. So once again, at least for your lecture exam, remember, it's only 2 chapters. So as an instructor, I need to put kind of 25 multiple choice questions from each chapter. All right. So you need to read your books, read my notes, understand the overall concept very well. Okay. If you still have questions, let me know. I will see you in the lab right now, 7 p.m.